Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wondered why you and your friend or partner sometimes just can't agree on what to do, especially when there is a risk involved? Well, this fascinating new study dives deep into that exact puzzle. Imagine you and a friend need to find food, but one of you is super cautious and wants to play it safe, while the other is a bit of a risk taker, always looking for that bigger reward. How do you decide where to go together? This research explores just that, how people balance risk, reward, and their partner's preferences when making important decisions together. They found that we often compromise, and surprisingly, how we assign blame or credit for good or bad outcomes can actually change how much we're willing to compromise. Humans are social creatures, and working together has been key to our survival. Think about hunting or gathering for resources. But what happens when partners have different ideas about how much risk is okay? If one person wants to hunt a deer that might get away or injure them, and the other prefers to just catch a rabbit, how do you reach a decision? This is where compromise comes in. But compromise isn't always easy, especially if it means giving up what you think is best. Foraging, which is basically looking for food or resources, is a perfect example where balancing risk and reward is crucial. When you do it with someone else, you also have to figure out what they're thinking and how their preferences might differ from yours. This paper is all about understanding that messy but important part of teamwork. So how did they study this? They created a cool online game where pairs of people had to forage together. It wasn't just about finding treasure though. They had to navigate a path where moving closer to a certain point offered bigger rewards, but also increase the risk of being attacked by a predator. Think of it like choosing a spot in a park to have a picnic closer to the playground. Might be more fun and have better snacks. But maybe there's also a slightly higher chance of a bee sting. The game was set up so that the closer you got to the predator, the higher the reward, but also the higher the chance of a negative outcome, like losing points. First, each person played the game alone for a while to get a feel for the risks and rewards and to establish their own individual risk preference. Are they the type to play it safe or go for the big score? Then they were paired up. And this is where it got interesting. In the Dyadic phase, they had to make choices together. Not only that, but after each round, they had to privately decide who was more responsible for the outcome themselves or their partner. Did they deserve more credit for a win or more blame for a loss? This part is key because it taps into how we assign responsibility in shared endeavors. What did they find? First, people tended to meet in the middle. If one person was very risk-averse and the other was risk-prone, they usually wouldn't just do their own thing. Instead, the risk-averse person would take a bit more risk and the risk-prone person would pull back a bit. It's like if you wanted to go to a loud concert and your friend wanted a quiet library. You might compromise and go to a moderately busy cafe. This shows that the fundamental tendency is to compromise rather than to counteract your partner. And guess what? Compromising actually helped for the risk-averse people by moving a bit closer to their riskier partner's choices. They actually learned more about the environment and ended up earning more rewards in the long run. It's like trying something a little outside your comfort zone opened up new possibilities. For the risk takers though, they might have lost a tiny bit of potential reward because they were already closer to the optimal riskier spots, but they still went along with the compromise. The amount of compromise wasn't random. It depended on how big the difference in risk preferences was between the partners. If the gap was huge, they'd either compromise more or even start to counteract each other. They also found that compromise seemed to be reciprocal. If your partner moved towards you, you were more likely to move towards them in the next round. It was a back and. Fourth, to really understand what was going on in their heads, they used computer models. These models showed that people weren't just blindly following their partner or ignoring them. They were actively and dynamically weighing their own preferences against their partner's preferences on each and every decision. It's like they had an internal slider adjusting how much they valued their own choice versus their partner's. This wasn't a global shift in their risk-taking, but a moment-to-moment calculation. Now, remember how after each round, they had to assign credit or blame. This is where it gets really interesting. People showed a clear egocentric bias. This means they tended to take more credit when things went well and less blame when things went badly, especially if they were in a safer or more forward position. If they harvested a reward, they'd say, "I did great." If they got attacked, it was more like, "Well, my partner was a bit too risky." This bias was stronger when things went wrong. And here is the punchline connecting these two ideas. Those who showed a bigger egocentric bias, meaning they were more likely to claim credit and less likely to take blame, were actually less willing to compromise with their partners. It seems that if you are always seeing yourself as the main reason for success, you are less likely to adjust your own behavior to align with someone else. This bias can really get in the way of smooth collaboration. Based on these findings, the researchers could even predict how pairs would move together in the game. They found that if both partners had similar risk preferences, they tended to move in the same direction. But if there were big differences, their willingness to compromise, influenced by their egocentric bias, would determine if they converged on a shared strategy or diverged and went their separate ways. The agent-based model they built confirmed this. High bias led to divergence, while low bias led to convergence. Finally, they looked at why people compromise even when it might not be the most rewarding choice for them individually. They found that people actually liked partners who compromised more. Compromising partners were rated as more enjoyable to play with, and they were assigned less blame by their partners. This suggests there is a real social benefit to compromising that goes beyond just the immediate reward. It makes you a better social partner. So, what does this all mean? This study shows us that when we navigate risky situations with others, we don't just think about the rewards and dangers, we also have to negotiate our different preferences. Compromise is a natural response, and it is often beneficial, especially for those who tend to be more cautious. The fascinating part is how our tendency to judge ourselves and others, specifically our egocentric biases in assigning credit and blame, heavily influences our willingness to compromise. If we're too focused on our own contributions and downplay our role in failures, we're less likely to budge for our partners. Now, it is important to note that this was an online game. While it is designed to be a realistic simulation of foraging-like decisions, real-world foraging involves many more complex social dynamics, environmental factors, and communication. Also, while they found a strong link between egocentric bias and willingness to compromise, the study mentions it is possible that bias reflects rather than drives compromise. Future research could explore this directionality more deeply. For us in everyday life, this is huge. Think about choosing a vacation with your family, deciding on a financial investment with a partner, or even collaborating on a work project. If one person is the play it safe type and the other is the let's go big type, understanding these dynamics is key. Being aware of your own egocentric biases, do you tend to take all the credit and deflect blame, can be the first step to being a more effective collaborator. Actively trying to compromise, even if it means a slightly less ideal personal outcome, can lead to stronger relationships and better team performance in the long run. It also highlights that sometimes the best decision isn't just about maximizing individual gain, but about fostering social harmony and successful partnership. If you found this breakdown of risk, compromise, and blame interesting, give this video a thumbs up and share it with anyone you often compromise with. And if you want to keep exploring the amazing world of psychology and neuroscience, make sure to subscribe to Rubin's Mind Lab and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next dive into how our minds work. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.